Okay.
All right. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. We have about 375 attendees. Thank you for joining us today from wherever in the world you are. My name is Eugenia Chiape. I'm a principal investigator at the Champalimau Neuroscience program in Portugal. And my lab studies the circuit mechanisms for visual control of locomotion. I was the general co-chair of COSYNE in 2020, and since 2019, I've been involved in diversity events at COSYNE. And together with Maria Geffen, we welcome you to the panel discussion, Path for Leadership in Promoting the Career of Members of the Underrepresented Groups, including but not exclusive to women in neuroscience. And I would like to first start by thank you, the COSYNE Diversity, chaired by Eva Dyer and Eric Shee Brown, for making this meeting possible, and also the organizing and executive committees for supporting it. So Maria and I have been discussing and thinking that we are in a very interesting and critical moment in which scientific communities and organizations are starting to recognize the importance of nurturing diversity and ensuring equity and inclusion for the scientific process in general, but also for the way we conduct science in our institutions and departments. However, many of the diversity that is really necessary for the scientific excellence is falling off the cracks due to the challenges in generating equitable opportunities for underrepresented minorities. And therefore, we as a community, as a scientific community, we are seriously failing in retaining this very important talent. So in this workshop, we invited leaders of our scientific community who have been committed and involved in establishing organizations and strategies within institutions to facilitate the growth and opportunities on individuals based only on their potential to succeed, regardless of their sex, gender identity, ethnicity, race, age, nationality, disability, or culture or religion. Maria. You're muted.
2020, 2021, you're muted. My name is Maria Niemer Geffen. I'm an associate professor at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. My laboratory studies the neuronal mechanisms of auditory perception and learning. I was the general chair of COSYNE in 2016, and starting with 2015, I've been organizing a yearly diversity event at COSYNE. This year, we have grown the program to include 3 events, which you can find on the COSYNE website, and we invite you to attend all 3 of them. To go over the logistics for this workshop, we will start with a brief introduction of the speakers. Each speaker will give a 20-minute presentation, followed by a quick 5-minute question period, after which we will use the remainder of the 2 hours for a general discussion. On the bottom of your browser screen, you will see the Ask the Question button. Please type your questions there, and everyone can use the arrows to promote the questions they like. We're going to ask the most pressing questions right after the speaker presentations and save more broader questions for the panels. When you ask the question, can you please indicate whether you want to come on stage to ask the question, or whether you prefer me to, or Eugenia, to read the question for you. If you want to come on stage, please make sure that you're in Chrome and that it has access to your mic and camera. With Eugenia, we present to you 3 unique scientists who bring different perspectives on how to provide opportunities for scientists from underrepresented backgrounds. Dr. Carmen Sandy is a professor at EPFL and the founder of the ALBO Network. Dr. Emmeline Edwards is the director of extramural research at NCCIH and founder of World Women Neuroscience. Dr. Susan Margulis is a chair of bioengineering at Georgia Tech and Emory University. Eugenia.
Yes. So our first speaker is Dr. Carmen Sandy. It's really a pleasure to introduce you to Carmen. She's a full professor at the Brain Mind Institute at PFL, Lausanne, Switzerland, where she directs the Laboratory of Behavioral Genetics. Her work really focuses on understanding the neurobiological processes that determine individual differences in behavior and personalities, and the effect of stress on the changes in the brain in the context of coping and social behaviors. And her work is terrific and is really reflected by more than over 190 peer-reviewed articles expanding from topics such as motivated behavior and the effect of stress on its modulation, social dominance, and mechanisms by which early life stress increases potentially the risk of the development of neuropathologies. Carmen is not only extremely successful scientist, but she's also very committed to our scientific community. She has been the president of the European Brain and Behavior Society. And from 2018 to 2020, she was also the president of the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies. She is currently the president, the co-president of the Swiss Stress Network and the chair of ALBA Network, whose important mission really places an emphasis on promoting equity and diversity in brain sciences via an action-based strategies, which I'm sure she will tell us more about in her talk. Welcome, Carmen. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Eugenia and Maria, for this very nice invitation. It's a big pleasure for me to be in COSYNE or COSYNE. I was always curious about this meeting, and this is a wonderful opportunity to get exposed to the meeting and also to this community. And I'm very, very happy to be here also to tell you about the ALBA network, why we decided to do this network, and what are the goals and the activities that we are doing, etc. So now I'm going to try to share my screen and look at the presentation. Can you see my presentation? I think so. Okay? So hello, everyone. As Eugenia indicated, I'm here to mainly introduce you to the ALBA network, which is a network that was constituted a bit more than 2.5 years ago, and it's been, I think, growing and growing in a number of the members and also actions and excitement.
Carmen, I see you're editing. Do you want to go into presenter mode?
I was in presenting mode.
Okay. Then it's okay, because we can still see your main screen.
But can you see the slides or not?
We can see the slides, so it's okay.
Let's see.
Yeah. No, we don't see it. We just see the slides on the side, but I think it's okay.
Okay, I tried a lot. I think, yes, thank you. So as I was indicating, this network has the mission to promote equity, inclusion, and diversity in brain sciences. And it was constituted originally mainly by European brain scientists, and with a focus that was mainly on gender issues. And this was back at the beginning of 2018, when we realized that still we were lagging very much behind in Europe, in most of the countries, and in some of them more than others, in the equity and also inclusion of women in particularly, I have to say, neuroscience. We looked at some data from different countries, and we realized that neuroscience was doing worse than other biomedical sciences or biology, for example. So talking with some colleagues, we thought that perhaps what we need is to have a network to be better networked, because normally male colleagues are better networked, and there were, of course, many actions ongoing globally, but we didn't have so many and special focus in Europe. And I was at that time nominated as president-elect of FENS, and I realized that we should be perhaps doing something. So in this FENS 2018 meeting in Berlin, we had already constituted a group of people that started working as a kind of steering committee. But very quickly after this committee was constituted, we decided not to focus only on gender issues because many of the underrepresented minorities and issues regarding the representation of these minorities have very similar problems, and also the goal should be broader than probably only focusing on gender. So from very quickly, from the beginning, we decided to expand the goal and mission of ALBA so that we could integrate diversity as a component of excellence, and also to try to retain talent in science. So many people have asked and keeps asking why ALBA, where does this name come from? And I decided to write a little text that it's in the ALBA website, and that I'm going to quickly go through it because I think it explains very well the mission and also the thinking that we have behind this network and movement. ALBA in several languages like Spanish and Italian means sunrise, and the word has this poetic resonance, evoking the beginning of a new day, when light is emerging to illuminate a new future. So the idea of this ALBA network is that we recognize that things are changing, and that it's important indeed to incorporate diversity, ensuring equity, but things started changing, so it's a quite bright future, and what we need is now to come together and together enable this movement towards a definitive change, so that there is a moment when all brain scientists have equal opportunities to thrive, but mainly acknowledging that this is a key momentum when progress starts happening. And I have to say that we felt this at the beginning when we constituted a network, and this has been, I think, confirmed over the last years, particularly in the last year, month, etc. I think the movement and the momentum is coming stronger and stronger, and this makes us, of course, very excited, and we are happy to share this with all of you. So who is the ALBA network? Who are the members? At the moment, there are around 600 members. These are members that just express their alignment with the ALBA mission and decide to register. So at the end of this presentation, I will also encourage you to register and to join us as a member. And there is a kind of a leadership or an ALBA team that it's organizing things more centrally, but this is something that we've been doing until now with a kind of a top-down approach, because we started constituting everything from scratch. Very soon we will be calling more colleagues and the communities for all of you who want to join.
Carmen?
Yes.
I think that the slides are not changing. So maybe
yes.
If you exit the presentation mode, and yeah, exactly, and you click that. Now, yes.
This is better like this?
Now it's updated. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so I stayed here then. Thank you for letting me know. So we have a board of directors, I think, with a very interesting and active colleagues that have contributed and continue contributing a lot to the development of all the different actions and the development of the concept. And I'm going to go very quickly through them so that you realize that we are, I think, very well networked in the global neuroscience communities. One of the board of directors is Tracy Bell, that's currently president of IBRO, and she's from Maryland. Elizabeth Binder, she's from Germany, from Munich, and she's very much, I think, connected to ECNP and also to psychiatric genetics. Megan Carey from Lisbon. She was the former chair of the FENS Kaplan Network, and she's currently the chair-elect of ALBA. She will take over as chair in July of this year. Francesca Cirulli used to be also president of the EBBS. She's from Rome. Monica De Luca is the current president of the EBC, European Brain Council, and also former president of FENS. Selka Tsunik is the chair of the Young Ibro, and also from Zagreb. Diane Lipscomb from the US, she was the former president of SFN, and Logan Ries, former president of the Belgian Society for Neuroscience, and she's from Mons in Belgium. So this is currently the core team and leadership. And then let's see how I move here now. We have several ambassadors. At the moment, there are 17, and this is colleagues that are very active, involved in committees and also leading task forces and working groups. So I'm not going to go through all of them because I wouldn't have the time, but I think you have the time to see their names. Some of them, for example, Gilles Logan and Tom Zwick-Flogel and other colleagues that we saw before have been very much involved in the writing of the declaration that I'm going to present in a couple of minutes. Other colleagues are leading the diversity task force or the LGBTQ task force. And then we also have advisors. At the moment, there are 12 advisors that provide us support in many different issues. And also they come from all over the globe. As you can see, Hélène Delbel is the president of FALAN, the Federation of Latin American and Caribbean Societies for Neuroscience, Hailan Hu from China, Marianne Joels from Netherlands, Jasmine Hort from Mount Sinai in New York, Hilal Ashwell from the EPFL, and so on and so forth. So I think, you can have an idea of the group of people that are moving and pushing for ALBA to get stronger and that make possible many of the actions that I'm going to be telling you in a little moment. I also wanted to mention that we have two colleagues in the ALBA office, Mathilde Morgan, who is the network manager, and Lorian Ale, who is a project administrator, who are helping a lot. And we also had recently an open call for a new officer. So I think soon the ALBA office will be growing, which is very much needed because, as you are going to see, we have a lot of actions and missions, and that requires, of course, resources. So I said that the mission of ALBA is, of course, promoting diversity, inclusion, and equity in brain sciences, and we have specific goals. I'm going to go through the examples of the actions that we are doing for each of these specific goals. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is we think it's important to recognize outstanding contributions to science and diversity. And for this, we launch a number of actions. This is an example of how you can see things in the website. I really wanted to show it to you and encourage you to visit the website because many of these actions are clearly explained there, and also you have access to many of the videos and also documents from all these different types of actions. So if we start with the first one, which is having role models and promoting examples of people that are dedicated to this mission. We have awards. At the moment, we only launched one award, but we are about to launch 2 new awards, so please stay tuned. So this award is the ALBA FKNE Diversity Prize. In 2021, in 2020, it was Erin Schumann that got this prize, and you can also see the video in which she accepts the prize, and also that it expresses or indicates the reason why she was nominated and why she was selected for this prize. So right now there is an open call until I think the deadline is the 8th of March. And if you have colleagues or organizations that you think should be promoted for this or nominated for the work that they are doing in terms of the diversity in brain sciences, I would advise you to nominate them. So other actions that we are doing is establishing role models through different measures. We had this first focus on video interviews. We did around 16 or 17 interviews to colleagues from many different backgrounds at different stages of the career that somehow represent excellent science and at the same time that are role models for being, I think, examples of underrepresented groups. As you can see, there are several women, but we have also people from different ethnicities or backgrounds. And it's very interesting. They are short video clips that I think provide a good idea of how is the person and also what's the science, what are the important points for these people in terms of both science and career-related actions. Currently, we have a podcast series to, I think, emphasize colleagues from diversity backgrounds. The other one was video, and this is podcast. It's a little bit longer, but very interesting interviews. They go in depth in some of the topics that are important for the different colleagues that are interviewed, and also I think it gives an idea of what could be the important points to tackle in this topic. I think, I listened to all of them. The latest one, the one from Huda Tsokwi, that as probably you know, she's the latest winner of the Brain Prize 2020, and she's going to be giving a talk next week in the Brain Prize conference. And it's very interesting, but all of them are very interesting. Ibukon Akinrinade is talking about how she managed to indeed pursue her dreams and what was her trajectory. Jose Cepeda is a very interesting scientist from Latin American background, also a poet. And I think the reflections about what we need to change in neuroscience and in the careers in science are also very, I think, stimulating. Basma Radwan has been also very successful with prizes like L'Oreal Prize, and also she's, I think, very inspiring in how she talks about how important it is to empower women in science. So this is something that it's ongoing. There will be more chapters in this series. So one of the other important goals for the ALBA network from the beginning, it's been to try to put together documentation and also to advance in actions that would allow us to share the best practices so that we don't have to always start from scratch whenever we want to have particular actions or have impact regarding inclusion or equity in academia and also in science. So this is something in which we had the different type of actions. As you can see here, I am referring to resources. This is something that you can find in the website. And this is documentation around different topics that we've put together in kind of folders that can help people from different backgrounds or different issues that are probably going through to find different types of resources or to find documentation that could be useful. For example, one of these folders has put together documentation regarding the impact of COVID-19 on women and minorities in science. Another one puts together documentation related to the gender bias in scholarly peer review. And this remind me that ALBA also coordinated a letter to the editor of Nature Communications when there was recently this article published, the famous article kind of discouraging people to be tutored or mentored by women, and ALBA had a rapid response in organizing and coordinating the letter to the editor, and luckily, thanks to probably many other actions, but including this letter, the editors decided to retract this article, as probably many of you know. There is also documentation regarding scientists with disabilities, what resources they could have, neuroracism in the context of Black in neuroscience in Europe, other figures, etc. So this is one important, I think, action. Another one, which I think it's been one of the major milestones for the ALBA network, it's the launch of the ALBA Declaration. This was done last month. I think it was around the 11th of January in the SFN Global Connectome meeting, and there was a panel discussion put with, I think, very interesting speakers and panelists that basically what was the purpose was to launch the ALBA Declaration that had been written and put together by a committee that was chaired by Megan Carey, and that by the time of the launch of the declaration had already close to 167 organizations that already endorsed the declaration very enthusiastically. So this has been a very important milestone, also a kind of a deliverable. And this ALBA declaration is a resource for concrete, positive, evidence-based actions that both organizations and also individuals can take to promote equity and inclusivity. So it's mainly focusing on some key aspects that are normally barriers for this possibility of just promoting equity and inclusivity, which is implicit bias and workplace culture. And here you can see different points that's tackling. I'm not going to go into the details. I really encourage you to go to the website, those of you that have not seen it, because I'm aware that many of you have already seen the declaration, and many of your institutions have also endorsed it and are among the first signatories. But of course, it was not only the launching, the time when people can endorse it and adhere it. Now, this process is open to everyone, and I encourage you to have a look and perhaps encourage your institute, your department, your university, or maybe your journal, if you are part of an editorial board or any other community, to endorse the declaration. I think it's important because it shows that the community is behind this common mission, and I think the enthusiasm that we have experienced from everyone that adhered shows that indeed it's an important mission for academia and for brain sciences, but it goes beyond brain sciences, as I indicated. So I will try to go now quickly. Something else that we do is try to provide networking and mentoring opportunities. We have been doing many networking events where people meet, for example, breakfast at the SFM meeting in 2019 in Chicago, or other events in the ECMP meeting, also several events in the FENS forum. Of course, nowadays it's more difficult because we are all at home in these online meetings, but still, during the virtual FENS forum in July, there were many events that were very well attended and that were organized by ALBA, sometimes in collaboration with other partners like the FKNI, the Young Ibro, or different initiatives that were carried by some of our leadership, like, for example, Srikant Ramaswamy. He decided to give an open presentation on the juggling between parenthood and academia, or Anna Beiler, she was talking about the situation of gender in neuroscience in Europe, etc. So this is something that we are very active, doing many different activities. And then also now we are trying to connect with the regions, because of course the mission of ALBA became global. It started being European, but we got IBRO and also SFN, as you are going to see, as major partners, partner organizations, and we became global. So we are now launching specific webinars in different regions tomorrow at 5 p.m. European time, Central European time, but it's going to be mainly with the focus in Latin America. So it's mainly people from America that will be connecting, but not only. We are going to examine with colleagues that are experts in the topic and representing different Latin American countries, what are the barriers that prevent brain scientists to thrive in science and academia? And there will be, I think, a very animated discussion tomorrow, and then we will have a specific focus in India, also Asia, eventually also, we hope, in Africa. That's something we are going to plan in the next months. So I go to this final type of activities slide because something that we still didn't do, and we are putting the resources, is to get enough data. So we are aware that it's very important in these topics of diversity and inclusion to have data on bias and representation, effective strategies, also databases of scientists in different countries, in different communities, etc. And that's something that still we didn't deliver, but we are working on. So if somebody is interested in helping us there as well, or in any other activity, please contact me or contact the ALBA office, and we will be very happy to get your support. If you have data particularly, that would be wonderful. So all that I told you would not be possible without the support from the funding partners. ALBA is embedded at FENS, the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies, and FENS is also a supporting partner economically, like it's IBRO, International Brain Research Organization, and SFN. And then we also have supporting partners such as the Federation of Wallonie Brussels and also the Brain Prize and the Lundbeck Foundation. And we are very thankful, and otherwise, without their help, as I said, their support, nothing would be possible. And we are also very active in interacting with many different organizations, as you probably heard, like the FKNI, Young Ibro, Women in Neuroscience, Black in Neuro. We have a lot of interactions, NeuroFem India, Queer in Neuro. SONA is the Society of African Neuroscientists, FAONS for the Asian Pacific Societies, FALAN for the Latin American, 500 Women Scientists, EBBS, CCMP, ENENIC Society for Neuroscience, and I hope soon also interacting with all Women in Neuroscience, and I'm looking forward to listen to Evelyn's presentation. So I will finish here, inviting you and encourage you to register as a member of ALBA Network. There is no fee, and also sign the ALBA Declaration if you're interested and help us promoting it. You can also follow ALBA in the social media. And as I said, join the network, and thank you so much for your attention, and apologies for the technical difficulties. Yes. We cannot hear you.
I'm going to see if I can share my screen. If I'm having difficulty, you could share my slides then.
Emmeline, let's see. Thank you very much, Carmen. And that's wonderful. Actually, I think it's great to have a centralized resource. Many times we're lacking the understanding of how to even look for, networking of people who may be very interested in actually establishing similar enterprises, different levels of our scientific community. So this is a reminder for people who to essentially write the questions as long as they're coming through your mind in the questions and answers, and then please let us know whether you would prefer to come here to the screen or just ask questions. I don't think we have so much more time but if there is one question specifically to the ALBA network, I have several questions, but I think it's going to be much more better suitable for the open discussion later. But if there is anyone out there who wants to specifically ask anything about ALBA to Carmen, there is one question that I think it's posted already, which I would like to bring more onto the open discussion panel. So
there is a quick question, which is, could you please repost the Twitter handle?
Oh. Okay.
All right, Dr. Edwards, any luck with screen sharing?
Let's try.
Okay. Our second speaker today is Dr. Emmeline Edwards, She's the director of the Division of Extramural Research of the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. And in this capacity, she is responsible for the development, planning, implementation, and policy of scientific programs that define, through a rigorous scientific process, the usefulness and safety of integrative interventions for improving the health and the healthcare system. Dr. Edwards was also the deputy director of the extramural program at the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. And before joining the NIH, Dr. Edwards was an associate professor in the Department of Pharmacology at the University of Maryland, where her work focused on the neural mechanisms of complex behaviors, including affective disorders. Apart from these specific activities, Emmeline is also a founder and the current chair of an international independent organization called Women in World Neuroscience that is dedicated to promoting the career development of women in neuroscience across the globe, and which I think we will learn more about it in her talk. Welcome, Emmeline, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I am trying to share my screen, but seems to be having some difficulty. I can see them in the background.
Yeah, can you try just on the very bottom panel, just press the PowerPoint button? Just click on that. Yeah, click on that. Like double click on that. There you go. And now let's go to presentation view. So slideshow, play slideshow.
Okay.
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 Great. Perfect.
Well, thank you. So thank you very much to Maria and Eugenia and the COSYNE community for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I am going to present wearing two different hats. So essentially as part of World Women in Neuroscience, but also in my capacity as director of the extramural program at the NIH for one of these institutes. As a result of this, I need to put this disclaimer slide where I have no conflict of interest, dealing with COSYNE. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to tell you a bit more about World Women in Neuroscience. It's really, as Eugenia mentioned, this is an independent mentoring and networking organization. Really, our primary goal is to create an improved environment for career advancement in neuroscience for women in all regions of the world. But I'll have to add a caveat that we're particularly interested in neurosciences from low resources countries. And World Women in Neuroscience really, before becoming an independent organization, functioned as an ad hoc committee of IBRO for a number of years. But in 2015, IBRO reorganized their regional committees, and therefore we decided to function independently. And we currently have an executive committee, which is composed of myself as the chair. Jean King is the co-chair. She's from the Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And we focus primarily on partnership and collaboration. We have Pamela Butler at Columbia University and Marguerite Matthews at the NIH, focusing on outreach and membership. We have Marta Davila at Howard University, focusing on education, and Orly Weinreb at Technion University in Israel, focusing on scientific advocacy. Now, I will say that while a lot of us are in the US, our cultural background really are very diverse. Both myself and Jean King are from the Caribbean. Marta Davila is from Mexico, and Orly Weinreb is from Israel. Pam Butler and Marguerite Matthews are from the US. Those are the subcommittees that we currently have active at Women World in Neuroscience. membership and outreach, really, it's really the outward facing of the group, engaging the community in various areas, social media, as well as more traditional platform. Partnership and collaboration. Carmen mentioned earlier that she's looking forward to working with World Women in Neuroscience, and so are we. We actually endorsed the declaration, the ALBA declaration, and are definitely looking forward to co-sponsor some event with ALBA, because our missions are, very complementary. Education is one subcommittee that focuses on really providing opportunities, webinars, and mentoring circles, which we find very effective, which would be really a more informal way of interacting with the community. And then science advocacy, as I mentioned, which is really mentoring a scientific platform in support of the research activities of women neuroscientists. I'll give you a few examples of activities that World Women in Neuroscience have sponsored. Here again, we talk about the mentoring circles. I will give you an example to give you a little more detail on that. At scientific meetings, we actually always get the list of fellows that are coming to those meetings, either sponsored by SFN or by EBRO. And then we invite those individuals, especially if it's the first time that they're coming to a large meeting, we invite them to actually come and meet with women well in neuroscience in an informal setting, and also focus on a particular aspect of career development. These have been really interesting, and we continue, we keep contact with those individuals following those meetings. We did a number of peer mentoring workshops in the Caribbean, in Africa, in East Asia. And we did a couple of interesting science policy forums. We did one in China in 2012, focusing on the leaky pipeline in terms of why are women dropping out at various stages of their careers. And in 2019, we repeated that same workshop in South Korea at the EBRO meeting. One of the most successful activities that we had was really to provide seed grants to investigators from neighboring university to establish collaboration, and allowing them to develop concept for grant submissions, later on. So one of the big problems that World Women in Neuroscience is trying to, tackle is really to reduce that leaky pipeline, where we know that gender and racial barriers really impede the development of these individuals in science, engineering, and medicine. So we know that there is a large discrepancy between the enrollment of women students and also underrepresented minorities, and the rate at which these individuals are promoted and receiving tenure. And obviously, as Carmen mentioned, this issue of gender and racial equity in science really is problematic, because it really constrains the opportunities for this individual, and also it really diminishes the potential of these individuals. So to address the problem, I think one of the ways that we have adapted our practices is really to look at it at the multiple level, the institutional level, community level, and in the individual level. And since I am at the NIH, I wanted to share with you the approach that NIH has taken to address both gender and racial inequities in science. Because the NIH, of course, is a biomedical research institution, the approach really has been to apply scientific rigor to intervention that will deepen our understanding of the factors that influence the careers of women and underrepresented groups in science. So the idea is to do an action-based research on strategies that could be helpful in making a difference. So I'll give you a couple of examples of the type of activities that have been done at the NIH. Of course, this has been going on for quite a while. So the first example is an opportunity, a funding opportunity announcement that was put out by one of the institutes at the NIH that's focusing on funding research on the causal factors and intervention that promote and support the career of women. Other examples include the award of mentoring supplement to existing grant that could demonstrate really some innovative strategies to improve mentoring and networking activities. The NIH Director's Office really has a specific award to promote biomedical workforce diversity. I'm not going to read all of this, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the kind of funded project from those activities. So for example, at the University of Pennsylvania, an investigator was actually received funding to do a randomized multi-level trial to study the factors that allow women to succeed in academia. Another example is Boston University, where they're doing a longitudinal follow-up to the National Faculty Survey. So those are actual research projects that are funded by the NIH to tackle those issues. The University of Wisconsin has a very interesting program that's focused on mentoring activities and development of faculty through focus groups with both the mentors and the mentees. And then there's a number of ongoing institutional strategies. The one I want to highlight is the newest one, where the NIH is now going to, as a new initiative called Faculty Institutional Recruitment for Sustainable Transformation, or FIRST. We just love acronyms at the NIH. This is a research funding opportunity that's going to develop a cohort of individuals. So the idea is that instead of institution hiring one or two underrepresented minority or one or two women for their department, the idea is to have a sustained approach and develop various cohorts of these individuals, providing support and really building a community so that the individuals that are hired are not do not feel isolated. And this is an experiment that is being started at the NIH, and we do hope that this will bear fruit, because a lot of time faculties, women faculties or underrepresented minorities are hired, but retention becomes a problem because people feel very isolated in those environments, and having this cohort effect is hopefully going to address some of these issues. At the community level, some of the things that we have done both at the NIH and also in World Women Neuroscience is really to encourage the development of personal and professional networks. Every year at the Society for Neuroscience, except for this past year, I have participated along with many of my colleagues into the networking activities that takes place on the Saturday before the meeting starts. And it always surprises me as many of the younger faculties or trainees really don't have a good understanding of the value of professional network and even how to start a network. So I think this is, at the educational level, this is really important to really have people, individuals understand how important it is. It is a lot of work, but it does have tremendous value for career development. In terms of developing collaboration and partnership, absolutely essential. We talked about this. Carmen mentioned the importance of having that network of organization working together, and of course, the strategizing through working groups to talk about issues of importance for career development. retention, career advancement, that sort of thing. One thing that I'd like to mention, Google has a very nice initiative called I Am Remarkable. And it really is an initiative to empower women and underrepresented groups to celebrate their achievement in the workplace and beyond. One thing that we realize is that a lot of time, both culturally and also from the regional perspective, not everybody understands the concept of self-advocacy. And in fact, a lot of women and underrepresented minorities don't practice that skill and don't develop that skills. So this Google initiative actually offers some training materials, some virtual talks that are available on demand, some online workshop, and some confidence boosting challenge, which I think are very important for this development of women and underrepresented minorities. WWN, World Women in Neuroscience, also had a self-advocacy social at the 2021 SFN Global Connectum. I invite you to actually go to our website, and also on the SFN website, it's still out there. We have the meeting recording, and we had representation from South Africa, from Egypt, from Brazil, from Puerto Rico, and from the US, women from these different countries having conversation about the impact of culture, policies, and religion on their ability to self-advocate and how to overcome some of those barriers. The last level of intervention really is at the level of the individual. So I think a lot of us go on to our careers really not fully taking the time to really know yourself, really doing an accurate assessment of your skills and your performance, being totally honest about your strengths and weaknesses, and really focus on the tasks where, excelling on critical tasks, demonstrating character and leadership. What I'd like to say is that a lot of us really need to build what I'm calling an authorizing environment. That means that you really need to know who the stakeholders that you're dealing with are and how important they are in playing different roles in your career. So you need to know who the players that you're dealing with. If you're working in a lab, you need to have a good understanding of the culture of the department. And even at a higher level of the university, you have to respect the structure, but you should not be totally constrained by it at the same time. And you need to really foster cross-communication between the different stakeholders. You are at the center, but you need to take advantage of everything that's around you to help you succeed in the endeavors that you're taking over. So I'm going to conclude my remarks there, but I'm going to be very happy to take any question. I want to acknowledge my colleagues from World Women in Neuroscience. I want to also acknowledge the center for which I work for at the NIH, the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, and of course, all the institute at the NIH. I am actually, my activities in Women World Neuroscience, I am allowed to do this as part of my official duty. So I want to acknowledge, the help given there. So thank you very much. Again, I think if we have any question, I'll be happy to answer them, but I'm gonna leave you with the URL for our website, our Twitter handle, and feel free to contact me either by email or through the NCCIH NIH website as well.
Thank you, Emily. That's really a great enterprise. I think we have one question here that I believe from Sarah Fayad.
I'm gonna stop sharing because nobody can see my. Let's see.
Yeah. Sarah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but I think this maybe is a question both for Carmen and Emmeline. She's asking about, assuming one has the funds, what are the options to find a mentor as a PhD student?
So for me, I think it really deals with this concept of taking ownership. It's really addressing this at the individual level. So I always say to trainees or young faculty, you have to really do your homework. Let's say you're going into you're trying to choose a lab. You have to take it upon yourself to actually find out as much as possible from colleagues, from people in the environment, as to what's the culture of that lab. How does the mentor interact? So you need to come into a situation with as much information as possible, and really rely on your network of friends, of colleagues, to actually help you make an informed decision. And don't rely on a single mentor. You can have multiple mentors, whether they are in the same institution or in various environment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm now going to introduce Dr. Susan Margulis. So Dr. Susan Margulis is the chair of the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Georgia Tech, an eminent scholar at Emory University. She's a world-renowned researcher in the field of biomechanics. The Injury Biomechanics Lab, under her direction, uses an integrated biomechanics approach to understand the influence of mechanical factors on the structure and function of human tissues from the macroscopic to the microscopic level, with an emphasis on the brain and lungs. She is a fellow of multiple engineering societies, has received tens of millions of dollars in research funding, and published hundreds of peer-reviewed articles. Prior to Georgia Tech, Dr. Margulis was a professor in bioengineering at Penn, where she has led numerous efforts besides building a world-class lab. She has led numerous efforts to help young scientists and scientists from underrepresented backgrounds succeed. I had the honor of enrolling in a program that she organized for assistant professors in STEM on training in leadership. To me, when I joined Penn, leadership was a new concept, and Dr. Margulis really built a unique two-year course which opened our eyes to the opportunities in our careers as researchers and what we can do outside of the lab. Dr. Margulis was the first woman to be named professor in Penn Bioengineering, and she founded an organization on campus that is very prominent, the Forum for Women Faculty, that advocates for success and provides support to women faculty. And she has been working tirelessly to create a welcoming environment for women at Penn and now at Georgia Tech.
Thank you. So I will now try and share my screen. Let me see. I think I'm going to try application window, and you'll have to tell me if it is successful. Can you see?
I don't see you sharing the screen.
Let me try going into. Now my screen. Okay, can you see?
Not yet.
Can you see? Not yet. Okay, I'm going to wait.
Now we see it, yes.
Okay,
Very
great.
good.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
All right, I can't see myself or any of you, but I can see my screen.
We can see you, we can hear you.
So I'll just talk to my screen. So I feel like it's such a a wonderful thing to speak after Eugenia and after speaking after the two speakers, because the truth is that Emmeline, Carmen, and I are three daughters of different mothers, but we are sisters, because there's a theme that will emerge from our three presentations about personal growth that we've each experienced as we tell our stories today, but also ways that we have had an impact on the world around us and creating communities where there were none. And so part of what I will be talking about will be some generalizing principles that hopefully each of you will take away, things that you can do for your own self, as well as for your communities moving forward. So a little bit about me. This is me on my first day of school. I grew up in Rochester, Minnesota, the home of the Mayo Clinic and also IBM. So I think that's where my merging of interests, math and science, as it applies to medical problems of impact, is important. One of my criteria for college was I really wanted to go to school far away from home. And 1,000 miles was the minimum distance. And I went to Princeton University, where I was the 10th class of women admitted to Princeton. I majored in mechanical and aerospace engineering there. So as you can imagine, there were very few women there. I met my husband in my freshman year. So I think it's important to bring up some personal challenges as we navigate our own career paths. Every single one of my moves professionally has been a dual career move, because Ken and I met freshman year. My move after my undergraduate career graduation was to the University of Pennsylvania, where I majored in and got my PhD in bioengineering. From there, I did my postdoc back in Rochester, Minnesota, at the Mayo Clinic, where I was the only engineer as a postdoc in a clinical department of thoracic diseases, and then my first faculty position was there as well. So an only engineer. When we think about isolation, I think it's important to not just think about being women or race. We should include religion. We should include your area of study and the career path that brought you to where you were. After Mayo, in my first faculty position, I joined the faculty at the University of Pennsylvania. And as Maria said, I was the first woman faculty member in the Department of Bioengineering and the only woman faculty member for the first 11 years. After 24 years at Penn, I joined the faculties at both Georgia Tech and Emory. I include a picture of our two daughters to the right, because the impact that we have is more than on our own professional network. I want to include the impact that we have on our families. So our two girls actually have enjoyed math and science and have taken career paths not like mine and not like my husband. He's a clinician investigator, but instead have combined it in their own strengths and have pursued career paths in fields where there are few women. So on the left is Rachel, and she is a computer engineer at YouTube and Google, and Emily is an architect. We have family conversations about navigating our professional paths as women in our respective fields, and share ways in which we are each having impact on our community. I can tell you it gives me great pride, and deep, deep pride, to see my daughters carry forward that mission that's so important. This fall, I read a book that resonated with me, A Lab of One's Own by Rita Caldwell. And as you can see, it's one woman's personal journey through sexism in science. I recommend it. I found the first chapters quite depressing, because I felt as though we've changed very little for women in science. Rita Caldwell is probably 10 or 15 years older than I am. We are still working on the same problems now for women who are just entering their career path in science. So I was looking for the right note at the end of each chapter, what we can do, and then finally at the end of the last chapter. And I shall tell you that what I summarized by this book is really an overarch of the words that you're hearing today from Carmen and from Emmeline, and also that you hear from me about my own career path. First is, she says, you're not alone. It is important to find the community, form those communities if they don't exist. It's so important to gather the data. You need to change the system from within. So you saw so much emphasis on sponsorship, That is about changing the system from within, from these existing communities of science. The change has to have the support from leadership, and institutional reforms are really what's going to make that change last. In my own journey, as a graduate student, I formed a community. I formed Graduate Women in Science and Engineering because I felt alone and that I wanted to learn about navigating my professional path with others. So we read books, we had speakers come in. It was professional development bootstrapped from graduate students. At the University of Pennsylvania, you heard Maria describe that I was one of the 6 founding members of the Forum for Women Faculty, created by women faculty for women faculty. Gathering the data was so important. I was very involved in the Faculty Senate at the University of Pennsylvania, eventually becoming chair. Gathering the data was something that we did related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, related to salaries, related to many different aspects. So important to gather the data. Changing the system from within also happened during that phase of my career path because we met every other week with the president and provost in a community, basically of the chair-elect of the Faculty Senate, the chair of the Faculty Senate, and the past chair of the Faculty Senate. I learned during that phase of my career path how important it is to have shared leadership, to have the continuity and the mission of whatever you're working on, but also to learn how to be a leader from someone who's had the position that you're about to step into. It's wonderful to have that shared leadership structure. And change has to have the support from the leadership. And there were times in those closed meetings with the president and the provost that the ideas came from the faculty and senate, but the president and the provost took them forward and owned them. And I was just as proud when leadership took our initiatives forward and called them their own as I was when we at the Faculty Senate made things happen and created things. So I think that that's so important to help others own the change and to help the leadership own the change. But institutional reform is really important. Emmeline, I have to tell you that I was on the advisory board for the multi-trial randomized trial for women in academic medicine. And it was from that experience that when the NIH funding for that trial ended at the University of Pennsylvania, we piloted it with support from the provost at the University of Pennsylvania to create Penn faculty pathways. And we decided that once the grant has ended, it needs to be owned at the institutional level to really make it last. And so that is Penn faculty pathways, the 2-year experience that Maria has experienced herself. But the journey to leadership really starts local. So I'm going to take the reverse order of Emmeline. I'm actually going to start with myself and then conclude with institutional changes. So from my own journey, my own leadership journey, I wanted to reflect and provide some advice to all of you. The 2 pieces of advice that I'll explain and deconstruct, the 2 pieces are use all of your equipment. And there are no maps to your leadership journey, on your leadership journey, and the trail is not straight. So using your equipment. This is me at the age of 6 on my favorite bike. Note that it has training wheels. I use this photo to symbolize a few different things about your personal journey to leadership. One is, note the training wheels. You need help. And at some point you take those training wheels off and you'll fall, you'll wobble, but know that you with practice will be a much more skilled leader. So you need to begin, as you've heard from Carmen and Emmeline, you need to educate yourself. You need to understand your strengths and weaknesses and your values. When you know what your values are, when people ask you to serve on something, if it aligns with your values, then I say yes. So knowing your own values is an important reflection too, and touchstone for you to do. It's so essential to realize that leadership skills can be learned. People are not born leaders. People learn how to be leaders. So those shared leadership opportunities, those opportunities to co-share, to work with someone as a team member and watch how they lead, so important. So I suggest that you start reading books, share those books with others and discuss them. articles. I share them with women in my own networks. Workshop sessions, sometimes they're just hours. I've been to workshops that were a couple of days. And coaches, wherever a coach can be found, take advantage. Sometimes it's a one-time thing. Sometimes it's a couple of sessions. Sometimes it's a longer experience. I think it's important to highlight the difference between role models, mentors, and sponsors. Role models are people who you could read about. Those podcasts are so important to learn about other people's career paths. You never have to meet them, but they can inspire you to be something that you hadn't dreamed of. But mentors are people who work with you, who are your guiders to help you grow professionally and personally. They should be a team, as you've heard from the others here today, and think of them as people who help you along your journey. Sometimes you speak with them frequently. At times I don't speak to a mentor for a year, and then I reach out to them again. They should be thinking of you in a holistic manner, not narrowly as a neuroscientist, for example. Sponsors are people who stick their necks out on behalf of you and promote you, nominate you, and put you up for things. It is important to form communities, and both Emmeline and Carmen are examples of women who have formed communities, as I am as well. I want to bring your attention to a book that I found really, really helpful. I read about it in the New York Times, and then I bought it for myself, and I read it and said, I need this. Every other Thursday, this group of Bay Area women scientists met and supported each other. Now in existence for well over 30 years, they provided peer mentoring to each other, but as important, they were accountability partners for each other. And sometimes when you say, I need to do something, when it's not for others, but it's for myself, I had a great deal of trouble honoring my own promises to myself. So when I formed, in our case, it was every other Tuesday group, I found that group members were my accountability partners, and it was so important to me. Reflection on your personal growth is key, and you've heard of that from Emmeline. But also, it is important to be your authentic self. When you know your values, your strengths and your weaknesses, and are really communicating your own honest journey as a holistic individual, both personal and professional journey integrated, you really can not only inspire others, but you start finding pathways that really resonate with who you are. This is a phrase, do, say, are, that I literally have right here on my desk. I'm in the Georgia Tech office. I also have an Emory office. And this is a phrase that I heard of from the vice president for communications at Georgia Tech. When one becomes a leader, when one tries to take an initiative as a person or as an institution, what she shared with me is first, just do it. Don't tell people about the fact that you're going to do it. Start taking those steps and do it. Then share what you are, who you are, and what you as a campus are. And then you will become and recognized as the leader that you are and perhaps the campus that you want to be. So do, say, are is something that I only learned about in the last year, and I wanted to share with you. There are no maps and the trail is not straight. Well, you've heard it from all of us. Know when to say yes and how to say no. And although people talked, both Carmen and Emmeline talked about the importance of saying no, I'm going to tell you how I learned to say no. This is from Marcia Lester, who's the former chair of chemistry at the University of Pennsylvania. She said, yes, yes, no, yes. This was above my desk, really above the telephone on my desk for years. And now I have it memorized. And I used this to say no in a way that felt okay for me. Yes, what you're asking me to do is really very important. Yes, I would be perfect for this request that you're asking in this position. No, I can't do it this time, but yes, please ask me again. I said yes when something aligned with my values. I said yes when I was going to learn from this experience. And I said no when I realized certainly I would help them. But this was not something that aligned with my values or helped me learn at this time. So know when to say yes and how to say no. I want to bring up positional and non-positional leadership. When I learned what the word non-positional leadership was, I realized I had been a non-positional leader for years. Non-positional leaders are those people in the room who have such important things to say, who everyone turns to and says, that's a great idea. And so non-positional leadership is so important when you recognize you are that person in the room, to begin to note the actions of your words or the impact of your actions and start noting that. We all keep our CVs. I encourage you to maintain your leadership accomplishments list, not just as a positional leader, but also as a non-positional leader. If you've served on a team that has accomplished something, write that down, keep that document. It's so important for you to be able to go back to it. It's also important to talk about plans versus serendipity. Many of us make plans, and when things don't go to plan, we're sort of at a flummox or at an intersection. This is from Afaf Melis, who is the dean of the School of Nursing at University of Pennsylvania. She talked about planned pathways to leadership. First, I'm going to get this degree, then I'm going to get that degree, and finally, I'm going to get this next degree. And then I'll have this position, then I'll have that position, and finally, I'll be ready for that position. But serendipity is very important because these opportunities don't always come according to your plan. So recognizing that you might be taken out of your comfort zone. You haven't had that education, or you might not have had that experience that you think is necessary before the thing you're being asked to do or serve on, or you expected that this would happen for someone who is at this level or had already been that kind of experience. So important to recognize that this may align with your experiences, those leadership experiences you've been tracking, and your values and your strengths, and it's important to take those risks. My move to the university, to Emory University and to Georgia Tech was serendipitous. I really felt that you needed to be a chair of a smaller, lower ranked program before you were chair of the largest program in the world in biomedical engineering and a high-ranked program. But instead, I was convinced by talking with others that I had had those experiences. So this is our program. It is, we graduate the largest number of women graduates in the nation at the undergraduate and graduate level, PhD level, and the largest number of minority PhD graduates and undergraduates in the nation. We're very large, we're very talented, and we believe in transforming both in education as well as in our research and having inclusiveness be part of how our trainees at the undergraduate and graduate level experience their early part of their career path and beyond. So I want to now talk about institutional support for inclusive leadership. And this is an example of my own experience, but also a lot of reading that I've done about what institutions need to provide to create those pathways for inclusive and diverse leadership. I'll begin with that again. Do first, then say, and then you will be recognized as an institution that is truly diverse and inclusive. You need to lay the foundation as an institution. Leadership has to value diverse voices in leadership. They need to value diverse pathways to leadership, pathways that are not always those traditional pathways where first you're a chair before you're dean, as an example. You need to promote visibility of diverse leadership. It's important to have faces out there and those stories and podcasts about those important leaders, as well as leaders that are from more traditional paths that are the allies that are creating diversity in leadership. You need to recognize, and you've heard this already from others, and reward those contributions of leaders as well as of team members. You need to celebrate. You need to provide awards or create them. And news pieces are also important about pathways towards reaching inclusivity in leadership. Everyone needs to own the cultural change. So training people how to be allies, mentors, and how to be bystanders to speak up is so important. You've heard already about transparency and expectations for promoting and advocating others. We have on our annual report, how have you promoted and advocated for others and put others up for awards? As soon as that part becomes regularized in expectations, people realize it's valued and they start stepping up and doing more of it. I think inclusive leadership and membership on committees, expectations that groups and advisory boards and associate chairs and deans need to be diverse. When you really say it and mean it and expect it, then it starts happening. and including diversity initiatives and metrics in the annual evaluations of leaders is so important. Everyone wants to do well on the metrics that are provided. So create those metrics, follow through with the expectations that they will be met. Gathering the data, you've heard that from others, and analyzing it, not only for diversity, look at equity, look at salaries, look at the climate. It's so important for inclusion. We need to begin to appreciate and really understand intersectionality. Right now we talk about it, we're not quite sure how to approach it and really understand it and take action on those challenges. Defining the problem begins with listening. You need to bring multiple people to the table to understand the local culture, institutional values, historic strategies that have been tried to create diversity and to create leadership pathways of inclusion at the top of the institutional levels. You need to engage the community broadly and bring new voices to the table, not just people who are on campus, maybe the people who interact with your campus, maybe those people who have graduated and left your campus, bring those people to the table as well. The strategic solutions is about learning about best practices, and sometimes those best practices are at the local level or at a unit on your own campus, or they're at other institutions, and you can repurpose them to your institution. But ultimately, you need to align the goals that you've learned about in understanding and laying the foundation with strategies, and the strategies that you use to reach those goals with those local values. When you align the goals and the strategies with the values, the resources follow. So when we developed Penn faculty pathways, it was about creating an environment in which our diverse faculty could thrive, be retained, and achieve leadership at the local level and ultimately leadership at the institutional level. So because we were aligning with the goals of the institution, the provost funded the program with no questions asked and continues to fund the program. You need to adopt a pilot mindset, and we've heard that as well. Scaling up a pilot that works is so easy, and it's easy to sell to leadership. Repurposing proven methods from your campus or others, so much easier than some very elaborate plan that may or may not work. Create opportunities to self-determine. Pilot studies that you ask people from bottom up to identify strategies to reach the institutional goals. It's very important. You may create that best practice at your local level and then scale it up later. Supporting affinity groups like those we're talking about and self-organized networks is very important steps for an institution, and creating pathways and communities to cultivate leadership development of our diverse groups. Having a continuous improvement mindset is key. We're not going to reach nirvana and stay there. We need to continually establish our metrics of progress, not our metrics, our goal metrics, metrics of progress. What should we be measuring to know that we're making progress? Ask for those metrics. It's not enough to state them. Ask for them and then report them. Learn from the failures. That's the wobbling bike and falling off. Pick yourself up. It's not going to work right the first way or the first time. And then having a mindset that you will be refining and revising the strategies. So as a summary, I list them all here. And in conclusion, I really believe that promoting leadership pathways needs to be intentional, needs to be inclusive. We need to bring many voices to the table to bring inclusive. Do things at the macro level and at the micro level. It needs to start with individuals, but it must have the institutional commitment in order to have impact. Thank you. So now I'm going to stop sharing screen. Did I stop sharing screen?
Maria, we cannot hear you.
Hang on one second.
Thanks, everyone, for your wonderful talks. We have a lot of questions to get through, and so I think I'm going to open up the panel rather than asking Susan specific questions and give everybody an opportunity to discuss and present. So, all right, I'm going to read the first question. The first question is, I attended the COSYNE diversity lunch last year and couldn't help but notice an extreme lack of BIPOC representations. What do the panelists and COSYNE see as the largest challenges and failures in the academic system that result in a lack of representation and support for underrepresented minority scientists? How can this issue be addressed to promote the career of members of the underrepresented groups? Would somebody like to start?
Yes, I can start perhaps. I think there are many possible actions. I'm going to say the ones I believe more, but I think we have to try them also because I live and work now in Switzerland, and the place is very homogeneous. So we don't have many minorities except for women that were really a minority here. It's very, very low representation. 10 years ago, there were less than 10% women professors, and now maybe it went up a little bit, but still it's very low. I think, there are many actions like bringing the culture so that people are aware that there are these biases, and maybe this helps a little bit. And I always think that before fixing the minorities, we have to fix the system, because otherwise it's unfair to people that might deserve it and be very well prepared, but still be badly judged or evaluated. Then maybe afterwards, indeed, we had a recent panel discussion addressed more to young women. And I think the issue of confidence was an important one. So I think everything that's been described here by Susan regarding the important points for to believe in yourself and become a true leader, I think they are important. But I also saw some of the questions regarding really what can be done, because when the bias has been so profound for so many years, it's very difficult to have an impact. Even if we just leave it the way it is, I think it's difficult. So I always think that we represent, let's say, underrepresented groups, minorities, but we are not well represented in science. And I think in science and academia, we should have an equivalent representation to the representation we have in society somehow. Like women, we are 50%, and if we want to work in science and academia, I think we should aim at being 50%, and other underrepresented groups are at lower levels, much lower than they should be according to the representation in society. So, of course, we can do many actions that are done at the moment, but I also think that the bias has been so historic towards particular type of people that had easier to get there, that I am in favor, and maybe it's not quotas, but I am in favor of having positions for specific people coming from different underrepresented groups. So I really think there is an amazing talent, and many times we or the underrepresented members of the different communities don't want to compete for positions because we don't believe that the system is fair. Sometimes, no, if you didn't see that there are others there are no similar peers, etc. So we have an a priori selection, and afterwards, many times, maybe the committees think that there were no good candidates. There are a lot of people from this group really to select. It's really not the way to go. So I think the way to attract talent is by having an open and fair competition and having this type of positions. And then I think if we convince a few institutions to do it, afterwards it will be easier to export the model to other institutions. I know that not everyone agrees with this, but I am very much in favor of correcting openly somehow, not hidden, not having maybe at the end people in the short list and then maybe choosing for somebody that it's not the one that everyone thinks deserve it because perhaps the ones that should be there didn't compete to get started. I stop here. I think its message is clear.
I think the one word that really resonated with what you said, Susan, your last slide, intentional. So I think we really have to if we're really serious about addressing these issues of equity and leadership for women and underrepresented minority, we really have to, act on it, and act on it with intention. So I'll give you an example. We have a program at the NIH that's the high risk, high reward program. That's actually from the NIH director's office. And it's an additional source of funding. So it's really a trans NIH initiative. And at the beginning, not a lot of women and underrepresented minorities applied. And it was really pretty jarring to see, 1 year, 2 year, the awardees. Not until this was addressed, head on, where we said, this cannot go on. We have to take steps to encourage women, encourage underrepresented minority, ensure that there is diversity in the geographic distribution. It did not happen until we actually took steps to make sure that this happened. So intentional is really a good way to go.
So one of the comments I'll make is that I've actually started having people self-nominate rather than be nominated for a position. I invite self-nominations. And the interesting thing is sometimes that's interpreted as, in addition to the self-nominations, I get people who nominate others, and then I reach out to them and I say, you've been nominated. Would you like to apply? And I think that's important. And there's plenty of data to show that women think they have to have checked every box to be ready for that position, rather than just have, part of the required experiences or just part of the expected experiences. Men are more eager to take that serendipitous path and to take risk and to put their neck out there. And I think women need to recognize that you'll learn. So in group, remember the every other Thursday group said, you have to apply. You just do it. And you'll learn from the experience of the application, what's expected, what the interview is like. And that way, when you really think that this is the one you want, the position you want, you will have had the experience of interviewing for other positions.
Yeah, I also want to bring the conversation back to the original question, which was asking more specifically about Black scientists and scientists of color. And I think at COSYNE, we really have a really huge issue with underrepresentation of BIPOC scientists. And I think that this is something that we're aware of. And as a diversity committee, we're working on making the atmosphere more inclusive for these scientists.
One of the things that I wanted to continue with this particular question that I think is a little bit of the other side of the coin is the idea of bias that I think Carmen, I believe, was just commenting on that. So maybe one tangential question, and we go back, I promise, to the questions on the question and ask a question list is, what is the best approach, either at the department, at the lab, at a departmental, at its institutional level, to recognize and counteract bias? That's for the panel, yeah.
I can start again. I think it's tricky. It depends. I think in different countries and different fields, we are at different levels also of advancement. I was very surprised when I was at the point not many years ago, the only woman out of 17 colleagues in my institute, and I commented that there was an issue. Also, our scientific advisory board and my colleagues that are, I think, very nice and open, they thought that there was no problem because we were very open in the search for anybody just for excellence, and that was it. Nobody was against women. Nobody had a bias, and I think I was surprised that there was a lack of knowledge of the data and the investigation, the research that shows that there is a bias, etc. So I think indeed having training that at least brings all this knowledge, that all this research, that it's there, it's essential, because if it's not known, it's very easy to just think that there is nothing because nobody's bad intention many times, no? So I think this is one aspect. Another aspect is different. Not all the biases are implicit. Maybe there are also explicit biases. So there should be also structural measures to make sure that inclusion and equity is included. So I think there should be also measures at the level of the faculty, the leadership, and something that I am aware that works better that sometimes than maybe encouraging committees to select minorities or whatever, is to empower the faculty in developing groups to deal with these issues of equity, instead of doing everything top down, to just bring the problem to the colleagues, and then colleagues that maybe never thought that they were going to be dealing with this, all of a sudden they have to solve this problem of bias. And I think this might be one way to change people from inside.
All right, we have another question. Do you believe that things can improve for underrepresented groups from within current structures and hierarchies of the scientific community, or is radical restructuring necessary? For instance, shouldn't we pay scientists who have been historically disadvantaged more money than the white cis male establishment in order to achieve real equity?
So I'd like to take that one. So I think it's really important to know your value. If retention, as we talked about before, of our underrepresented faculty is a big issue. And of course, we're trying to help people feel welcome, but they are going to get offers to go other places. And so it is so important to say that you're being wooed by others, because in the end, you actually could end up getting higher salary because the desire of the institution is to retain you. It's so much more cost effective to retain you by offering you more salary than it is to recruit somebody new to take your place. And so, yes, I do believe, but it can come from you advocating for yourself. And I was horrified that you had to have an offer to leave in order to actually go and forward with this. And so what I've learned is you don't actually. You just have to have the data. If you find that you're making below average for your time in rank in the position that you're in, bring that forward to your chair, because it isn't right that you should be making less than norms. So at least look for a disparity in the negative direction. The question was about, should they make more? So I'd like to share that some of our, this spring, I actually talked with our, last June, I talked with our Black faculty in our department, and they talked about how they're often giving research positions to Black students. And if only there could be some funding that would allow them to have more than the usual number of undergraduates in their lab to be able to give them their first research experience or a comfortable research experience. So I think it's not only about the resources in terms of salary. Think about other ways that you could ask for resources to promote diversity on campus. Again, aligning your strategy with the goals of your campus and your department that might not be your own salary. So there are a number of ways that I think that we can and should be providing more resources to our underrepresented faculty.
Let me just add that, a lot of time underrepresented minorities are overburdened by demands to, participate in a lot of activities related to, of course, equity and diversity issues. And I like Susan's suggestion to actually find different ways to get some incentive from the institution to allow them to add some resources that allow them to actually be able to participate, but not at the detriment of their career advancement. Because at times they feel that they have to take on a lot of additional committee work or service, and that detracts from their own career path as well. So it's this idea of identifying the resource that would be helpful and negotiate that with the department or the university.
I'm looking at you, Maria, but I'll. So there is another question that is for all the members of the panel. So acknowledging that networking is so important to career success, do you have suggestions about how to go about it beyond Google's workshops? It's hard. How did you go about it?
I always say to, I go back to my experience every year at the Society for Neuroscience, where actually I usually have a table that is, the title is Growing Your Professional Network. And I share that with a number of other colleagues. And students and junior faculty come in and, talk to us about different ways. It's the idea, it's the initial contact that's most people find hard, and find that it might be a little bit like you're almost using someone. And I say, forget about that. Yes, there is a certain level of perhaps you're taking advantage, but it's for a good cause. And as long as you understand that this is a reciprocal relationship, I think that's where you can alleviate this kind of guilt feeling. But you also have to recognize that it is hard work. You cannot just contact somebody once and expect the person to actually be able to help you when you need it. You need to cultivate that relationship. Doesn't mean that you have to do it on a weekly basis, but from time to time, you need to let the person know what you're doing, what progress you've made, and bounce some ideas. So yes, it is hard work, but it does have some huge benefit. And I strongly encourage it. I know it's difficult, and it's something you just have to do. As Susan say again, this idea of do, say, and are is really appropriate there.
Something else perhaps to add as maybe additional ideas is to be proactive in organizing seats, depending on the stage of the career, but maybe for younger group leaders, organize symposia or invite people to seminars, organize discussion groups, etc. I think by working together is the best way to be networked than just maybe meeting only in some of the networking sessions. Trying to identify action groups or also if it's related to your science, organize. Nowadays it's easy. One can even invite a group to discuss something, and I think people are very responsive, not all the time because we are also busy, but there are many opportunities, and it's important to be proactive also.
So I want to share an experience that I had 10, 15 years ago at the Biomedical Engineering Society, where at the time I was on the board of directors, and between sessions, I said to a friend, maybe we should have just the women get together at the bar in between this, hour that was between the end of a session and the beginning of a something in the evening. And there were 50 women who showed up at the bar. And so it's not only your network and forming your network. Women will, and you can challenge them to form the network with you. Because I was on the board of directors, the next year I asked them to put it in the program that hour was going to be a real hour for women in biomedical engineering. And they got us a room, and all the senior faculty women bought the bottles of wine, and the junior women and the senior women drank it. And then 100 women came. And the next year we got a ballroom and had luncheons. And we have over 350 women each year who gather to hear an inspirational woman speaking about their career path or a workshop on developing leadership skills. So you don't have to form the network. You can just be the catalyst that, and the network can form more organically.
There is actually a very good suggestion in the chat where someone is saying sometimes you can work through maybe people from the PI's lab. So go, reach out to the postdoc or the graduate student, and that would be your entry point to the PI. So that's a very good suggestion.
I just want to add that, specifically within COSYNE, we started with just such an event as Susan described. We had first lunch, and then they turned into workshops. And we welcome you to participate. You're already here, but get more involved with the various initiatives. That would be really great. All right, let's see. Our next question is, what advice would you give for a lab to more effectively recruit and attract members of the underrepresented minorities? For example, careful, explicit wording on job advertisements and the lab website, or can you recommend venues lists for such advertisements? Do you have other suggestions?
So I think one thing that I would say is to take advantage of some of the feeder schools. So HBCUs where you have the majority of the students are from minority background, can be a source. And also advertising at in meetings where there is a large group of underrepresented minorities. So for African American, ABRACAM is a meeting where there is a large preponderance of African American. SACNAS is another large society for Hispanic students. So I think it's really getting plugged in into the good sources of excellent students that are from those communities. And again, this is a situation where you have to take the time to do a little bit of research and identify the right sources that would yield the result that you're looking for. I mean, it's very easy to say, I can't find them. I don't know where to look, but if you really do a little more homework, there are plenty of sources of excellent students that you could actually recruit for your programs.
Okay, so here's the next question. I am part of a small group in my institution that is dedicated to supporting underrepresented scientists. We noticed that most scientists conceptually support our goals, but we struggle to get scientists to engage in actions that can bring about reformative change. What can we do to encourage scientists to do more support to underrepresented minorities?
I had an experience very recently. I'm a Georgia Research Alliance eminent scholar, and there are a number of them around the state of Georgia, and they bring us together once a year for a kind of a symposium. And we used an hour of it to talk about what we're doing in our own labs to promote more underrepresented minorities, graduate and undergraduate, in our labs. And there were some very creative ideas. So the fact that the organization was celebrating what we were doing as an individual and calling it out to other people who are in this kind of a limited network, if you will, of very senior scholars, I think it goes a long way towards, number one, you're kind of recognizing or awarding it, right? Learning about ideas that work, even developing collaborative pathways. And so I think just create those opportunities for people to share.
All right, some other questions. We're actually at 4:59, so I think we might not get to all the questions, but I think we have been, we've just been having such a great discussion. We've covered, I think, actually a lot of the points that Eugenia and I originally were trying to address in this panel. So we just want to thank again our panelists for joining us, for giving inspiring presentations. We really appreciate the work that you have been doing, and it's been a really unique opportunity to learn more about your paths and the projects that you're engaging in. So I also want to thank again the COSYNE organizing and executive committee. I also want to thank MindCore. That's a PEN organization that last minute jumped in and gave us the opportunity to run this workshop on this platform. And my co-organizer. Yeah. Do you have something to add?
No, I echo your sentiments and thoughts. I think this was been a lot of beyond actually what we were initially conceiving, and I really thank you. And it has been an amazing group of panelists that are bringing different perspectives, but with a lot of convergences. And I feel like we have all learned. I'm very much inspired right now, and I hope that the audience out there as well. I think it's important to understand and study, and this has been, if anything, a good introduction to how to go about these particular different questions that might interest you and resonate with these values, these personal values. So again, I want to also repeat, if there is anybody out there who's interested in these questions in our community at COSYNE, please get in contact with us or the diversity chairs, Eva Dyer and Eric Shee Brown, to help us organizing more of these events. We think it's an important component of working towards a much more inclusive community.
I also just would like to encourage you to join us tomorrow for for a mini symposium on the history of race and racism in science, and on Thursday for a workshop, Expanding Horizons, Diverse Perspectives in Computational Neuroscience. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.